turn it over to Tim to start the program here.
Well, thank you. I want to thank Baldwin for inviting me to come back again to do a program. The one thing that I specialize in doing and love to do is to show you how not to ever cut off a body part. I don't care what you're cutting on a saw. And I will bet my house that nobody will cut certain things smaller or safer on a saw than I will. And it doesn't mean that you know how to do any woodworking, you just know how not to cut off body parts. But hopefully some of the things I'm going to demonstrate today, I was lucky years ago when I wanted to do certain things that I didn't cut something off. I had wood shoot off saws and do a lot of things. Fingers were too close to a saw, I didn't feel comfortable. But God allowed me to really develop some methods and techniques that allowed me to do some things that other woodworkers don't do, so it makes you look like you're a better woodworker than what you really are. Because a lot of things I make sometimes, you don't have a comparison to compare them to, because nobody else is doing them. So I enjoy that. But I don't care whether you're an experienced woodworker or you just started. There's hopefully something you will pick up today that will make you smile and make you be more creative, allow you to be more creative when you go back in your shop. And that's the whole thing I'm trying to do today, is show you how to be safe. I'm not an expert on the bandsaw. I don't make bandsaw boxes and that type thing, but I'm going to do some demonstrations on all these tools with some small pieces. All right. If you have any questions as I'm going along, you can raise your hand and I'll try to explain them then, okay? The first thing you need to be able to do, you got to protect, number one, your eyes, because small pieces coming off of a saw will cause a lot of damage. A lot of damage is done by, a little piece of wood is, you can fix it, but when you use chemicals like Drano and stuff people use, those chemical burns you can't you can't reverse it. So be careful when you use chemicals in your house, all right? You want to protect your lungs. Now, my voice is not as strong as a lot of people's, because one side of my vocal cords for some reason has a little curvature to it, so it doesn't close up like it should, so I use more air to talk. The second thing is, I probably take in about 70% of the air I should be taking into my lungs. They're clear, there's nothing wrong with them, but I think it's a little touch of, the doctor said, maybe a little asthma, a little something, I don't know what it is, but so protect your lungs, and this, especially when I'm doing work in the shop. You want to protect your hearing. I might do one cut without these, but if you're going to do a lot of repetitive stuff in your shop, you need to be able to protect these. And using the dust mask, this is probably the worst of all the dust masks you can use, but it's the only one I can use because the others won't allow me to breathe good. So I have to sacrifice taking in air for a few more particles that maybe come in that shouldn't come in, dust particles. And the small dust particles are the ones that are going to cause you a problem, not the big sawdust you see on the floor. That's not going in your lungs, okay? Now, with that, what I'm going to try to do is do some demonstrations where hopefully will keep you safe. I'm going to actually make a box, start to finish. We're going to make a hexagon box. I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut the bottom to fit. I'm going to cut the recesses in the side so the bottom will fit in it. And we're going to measure and cut for a top. But everything I'm going to do today, on purpose, I'm not going to use a tape measure. All right, but I'm going to show you how you can cut precise parts without using a tape measure. Everything I do what I call fun, safe woodworking. It starts with safety, cutting, gluing. Those are the three things that make everything I do look a little bit different. If you don't glue up stuff properly, your lines won't be crisp so that the wood look like it came out of the tree with all the different colors in it. You'll have fuzzy looking lines if they're not flat and straight when you glue them up. So that's what we're going to do. I was going to make a small box like this, but I decided I'd make one even smaller. But what I'm going to do is, this is a hexagon box, we're going to make one like this. I'll cut it on the table saw, on the miter saw. Any cut I do here, I'll do on the table saw, and I'll show you how we're going to do it, because we are going to do some of those. All right. And it makes you smile a lot because you see something different. Everything I do, there's more than one way to do it. I'll show you my method of doing some things I can do 2 different ways, okay? And I have to try to get used to saying I'm making myself clear instead of do you understand? Then it makes me sound stupid, I don't make you sound stupid, okay? So, now, what I normally do, sure. Oh.
Just lay the piece down here.
Oh, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dowel, that's a 1/4-inch dowel, and a lot of you have seen this before, but for the new people that hadn't seen it, I'm going to cut that dowel in half on this saw. I'll cut it in half on that saw safely. That's the key word. I'm going to take that half and cut it in half again. I'm going to take that 1/4 and cut it in half again. All right? My fingers will never be within 5 inches of this saw blade, period. Now, I'm going to try to do something I hadn't done before. We're going to take that dowel and we're going to cut it in half. Okay? I'll do it on this saw. I'm not going to spend the time to try to do it on that saw, but I can. All right, but the technique I'll show you and show you how it's transferable to that saw is same difference. The thing that you want to do when you start doing some of these things, you'll feel ill at ease. The more you do them, the easier and the more natural they will be. And they will allow you to be more creative in some of your designs and stuff you want to glue up and cut to put into that piece of furniture or whatever that somebody else can't do. And that's, you know, the whole thing. I will make all right. We're going to make a pair of earrings. When you get a chance, if you hadn't seen it, everything on that table right there is stuff I'm going to demonstrate how we do it. Nothing on that table, I didn't use a tape measure to cut out any of that stuff and make any of it. I got a box that I made in one day. It was a jewelry box. I made the whole thing start to finish one day for a fellow at Turner Communication. We did a video on it. That never went any further, except for putting the finish on it and flocking it. I cut the whole box out in one day. It was a little more elaborate than those. And shaped the front with a belt sander at that time, believe it or not, and a router. The earrings, every pair of earrings you see came right off the saw. There's no sanding in the wood when I do earrings. I sand the finish. But I'll show you how, when you're doing a lot of cutting, how you can eliminate all of your tear out. Oh, well, I was going to pass these around also. These are just some pieces when I'm doing demonstration woodworking, showing I make a lot of earrings and I usually give them away, and sometimes I throw them in the box so I have pieces. But when you look at this, you want to look all the way around and you virtually see no tear out. I will also show you how I can actually put marks on here. I will skim this just enough to clean it up to where the marks will disappear. So when you got saw marks on wood and stuff like that, I don't care if you're on the table saw or the miter saw or the radial arm saw. I have radial arm saws in my shop. I have 2. I don't have a sliding compound miter. I don't have room for it, but I have an 8-inch radial arm saw and I have a 12-inch. I had a band saw. I probably did woodworking 15, 18 years before I ever got a band saw. So everything I cut with a curve in it was normally done with my jigsaw. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay. I'm not going to cut the whole box out. I'm just going to cut a couple of angles and I'll show you. But I can draw any kind of box I want to draw on paper. I'm going to cut it out off of this drawing. I don't know what this angle is and don't care. I can find it. And I'll show you how to find it. Okay? This is an angle that most woodworkers, oh, I'm sorry. Can you get it? Yep. This is an angle that most woodworkers won't design a box to do because your miter saw and your tubes won't cut that angle. But see, I can cut that angle on the table saw. I can cut it on this saw. All right? And that allows me to do some funny shapes and stuff like that. You see what I'm saying? Yep. As I say, every box we cut out, when I show you how I cut boxes out here, every box I cut out, the grain will be continuous all the way around the box. except for the back end. I don't care what shape it's in, okay? And we're gonna demonstrate some of that. I'll show you two different methods for cutting out boxes. I'll take a piece of wood, and what we will do on one method, I will cut all the, this is gonna be a hexagon box. I will cut all the parts off straight like this first. Then I'll cut the angles on them, all right? I'll show you how to do it where you can cut one at a time if you want to for an irregular shaped box. And the grain will still be continuous all the way around the box, all right? Now, let's see if we can do a little cutting. All of you got miter saws or radial arm saws, it's got a big slot right in here. Might have more than one slot. And it doesn't matter how it is. What I'm going to do is put an auxiliary table on here. When I make a cut, I will have a zero clearance, number one. Two things will happen. I will know exactly where that saw blade is cutting. And that helps me to position pieces to cut them exactly where I want to cut them. The second thing is, like I say, I'm going to use two-sided tape and glue this down. I need to go ahead and put on my funny looking stuff. This is going to look funny on YouTube, but I have prescription glasses that has the bifocals, and I have problems trying to go from one to the other when I'm doing demonstrations. So this allows me to see, but it also allows me to see close. But the other thing is when I look like this, sometimes people won't question you as much because you don't look like you're quite all there. You're not, so there's an advantage to it. All right. If you have any questions while I'm doing this, I normally would have done this earlier, but I wanted you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing and how I'm sticking it down. And I try to do things so that if you're new to woodworking, step one sometimes is more important than all the other stuff in between. So I wanted you to be, it takes a little more time, but hopefully it'll be worth it. When I stick down an auxiliary table, I don't care if it's on, I'll do it sometimes on my table saw if I'm doing certain cuts that I'm going to do a lot of. But I always put tape on both sides to where the cut is going to be because I don't want that board to move on me. I'm hoping this one will stay flat, but this has a little crown in it. But I'm hoping the tape will hold that crown down because I need it to be flat for what I'm going to do. To do the tricky cuts, ain't it? Am I making myself clear so far? But if you have any questions in the meantime. I also am going to stick a piece of fiberboard. I like to use the 3/8 fiberboard. It's thin enough and light enough for me to handle and do what I'm going to do when I'm doing this. I also stick a piece on the back because I need the, I can't use this opening back here for some of the cuts I'm going to do. Especially when I get ready. When I get ready to take this piece and make that small hexagon box for you, where the side's only 1/4 inch.
I would assume you don't use dust collection.
I do in my shop, but I have a shop vac.
Yeah, but I'm saying.
Oh no, it really when you use the zero clearance, the dust is going to fly everywhere. Okay, and also normally the cut when I try to do another little funny cut I'll show you. I didn't show you everything I'm going to do on this saw. But besides cutting the other small dowel, we'll take this dowel, we're going to stand it up here, and we're going to rip it on this saw. As I say, every cut I do on this saw, I can do on that saw.
Anything special about the blade?
Just want a sharp, good smooth cutting blade. That's the only thing I require. For years, the only thing I would use would be forest blades, but the technology that has developed, that's been developed, allows a lot of saw manufacturers now to make quality blades where they're completely flat. And the reason most blades used to have your teeth sticking out like this, the blades were not ground real flat and the steel was not as good as it is as some of them use, so that the blade wobble. You don't see it when it's turning. So the teeth were like this so that it would clean out, you know, for the blade and it wouldn't bind. And I'm no expert on blades either. You know, probably have told some people this before, probably say it a lot of times more. A lot of people that know me or have seen a lot of things consider me to be an expert in dealing with small stock. But I'm not an expert in anything except Ted Baldwin woodworking methods and techniques. And the only thing to qualify you to be an expert is you know more about a subject than most people. That's all. I know more about my methods and techniques than anybody I know, so that makes me an expert in that. And that's the only thing I ever claim to be an expert in. All right.
Have you thought about writing a book, Ted?
Hmm?
Have you thought about writing a book?
No, you know, for years I've had people tell me you need to make a video. I said, well, yeah, I do, but I just, believe it or not, I just enjoy what I do. I enjoy demonstrating mainly so that I can show people how to be more creative and have more fun. Because I always say I have more fun than anybody I know. Now I had another piece. What did I do with it? There it is.
Does that make carpet tape? Where do you get your tape?
They sell it here.
Okay.
You give them special prices, because he has special prices for people that want to glove. I think the price is $9.95 a roll, but you get $5 a roll.
What this is, I used to buy carpet tape from Home Depot. Years ago, they made the thick, extra heavy carpet tape that was pretty good. It was thick, and it didn't really leave a lot of residue. But the stuff they started making, when you stick wood together with it, when you pull it off, you got all this residue on the wood. And I was lucky that I found this place. There was another friend of mine that told me about the tape place. They used to be in Fayetteville, not in Peachtree City. But you have to buy a whole case. And when I demonstrated here, a couple of years ago, George, then David brought some in for the members. And this is a masking tape, two-sided tape. It holds great, it doesn't leave a residue, and it's thin. Sometimes you put it together, you can't really see its tape in between it. And you have to be able, I'll show you as I go, rather than spend a lot of time, how you actually use it. First demo.
What kind of wood are you using for the base?
You can use plywood, anything flat. This is just a fiberboard. Plywood is a little more expensive. I can buy this, and usually when I buy a sheet of this, I cut it up into smaller sizes. This is the only thing I use it for. All right. And I'll show you how I'll use a piece of, no, I got a piece of plywood. We'll make a simple sliding table that you can make, and it takes 5 minutes to make, to do the cutting I do on it. First thing I'm going to do, as I say, I don't cut on any saw unless I'm looking at the blade. When I cut out all of my boxes, I got a small miter saw in the shop. Everything is turned this way. I'm looking at the blade when I cut. I never cut an angle from this side. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. What I'm going to do first before I start cutting the small pieces, I'm going to set this saw up to cut any angle I want to cut. Here, these are the most common angles I use. This is 30 degrees, this is 45. All right? Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting. But one end is 45, 45, the other one is 30. When I want to cut, we're going to cut a 30-degree angle because I want to make a hexagon box, and each one of those angles will be 30 degrees. So what I'll do is, I will pull my saw down. Now you notice, when I pull my saw down, I'm not grabbing it like this because I could accidentally turn it on. I'm always pulling it down this way. All right? Now, what I'm going to do, that's 30 degrees. Everybody see that? Now, let me do one other thing. I have some two-sided tape on here. And if you never, I had two-sided tape a long time and I never used it because I couldn't get the stuff apart. But, you know, if you go on the end and just kind of rake back a little bit over the top, you can pull the top loose. I used to do it with my fingernails, and all of a sudden both of my hands were so sore right here where I was actually pulling the skin away. And I did it like that a long time before I realized I needed to use something else. And for a lot of the things I'm doing with the two-sided tape, I won't use pieces this big. I'll actually use little strips that's 1/4 of an inch that I'll show you. And they actually hold.
You got it set 30 degrees by lining it against the saw blade?
Mm-hmm. Let me make a cut first because I need to push this back a little further. Now, I know where the saw is cutting now, okay, for everything I'm going to do. I got it. Oh, we got it. Since I'm using a smaller thing, I'm going to use a smaller piece to cut the box out. All right.
That's the same picture?
Yeah. I get it. I get it. Now, what I'm doing, all the cuts I'm going to do is not going to be up against the fence, except for that last little cut when I do the small box. By being able to have, I don't have to have a fence on here to do the cuts, but the sandpaper is what's going to allow me with the sandpaper on here to create a vise where I can cut in the middle of the table and the saw won't snatch the wood. All right, and that allows me to cut any angle I want to cut. Now we're going to do two things. By this being a 30-degree angle, and everybody see what I'm doing. In order to cut, if I put this piece here and I want to cut an angle in the middle of the table, I have to have something back here that's higher, and my pressure is a downward pressure. All the pressure is applied right here at the tip. So this tip is doing nothing but holding this tight to the sandpaper. You understand what I'm saying? And that allows me to, can you see that? You can see it better when I cut. Let me do this. Now I'm applying the same principle here when I do it sideways. By putting this here, I'm making the back end be thicker than the front end, so that when I put my stick to hold it, my hand is here. Does that make sense? All right, my hand, I'm still 5 inches away from the saw blade. I'm looking at the saw blade so I know exactly what's going to get cut and what's not going to get cut. All right, Only thing I want to make sure I do is have it so that the tip is not in the line of the saw. It will not only cut through the wood, but it'll cut through the sandpaper and dull the blade. So we're going to cut out the hexagon box. What I'm going to do first, that's my first 30-degree angle. All right. How long do I want the box size to be? Now, anybody know what happened? I didn't have it up against the fence. I wasn't holding it. I was just cutting it off. Now, how long do I want the box size to be? That's going to be my length.
3/4 of an inch.
Well, I'm going to cut the small one that way.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's cut this one like this. I'll put me a mark there. See, I've already cut 30 degrees on one end. Now I'm fixing to cut the other 30 degrees. Every piece is going to be cut to that mark, all 6 sides. Let me go ahead and cut it, then I'll explain it. I forgot to explain one thing to you. Everything, this sandpaper does raise the piece up a little bit. I have to put something on this side so the piece is not hanging, cantilevering over, okay? I normally use 120 grit paper, but this is 180. I heard you, that didn't register. What I would normally do is put a 1 here and a 2 here. All right, this would be my first cut. I would put, this is the one we screwed up on. And what's happening, like I say, this was out to where it wasn't flat up against the thing. I thought I cut it off enough to do that. So that's 1. I need to recut this again. And as I cut each one, I would actually mark it. Now, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm standing to the side, but I'm going fast. You should never rush when you're cutting. You always cut and let the blade do the cutting. When you do that, see what happens? And that's my fault, not anything else. Not that I don't know better. And as the blade comes back up, it's grabbing this piece. Normally when I do this, I'm on a different thing I'm on now. Normally when I do this demonstration, I cut all my pieces flat first so that I'm not dealing with the hangover. All right? So now that you saw what happens there, there's somebody's tag on the floor. Now, if that's happening to you, see, when I brought the saw back up, the blade is actually hitting that other part because it's not pushed away. So to eliminate that, everything that happens to you on a saw, you need to stop and figure out, now, why is this happening, so that you can try to eliminate it. All right? So even when you're doing demonstrations, you know, I'm glad sometimes when things happen so that I can show you a different thing that you shouldn't be doing. And all I'm doing is leaving it down till the saw stops. Normally, we'll do it right here. That way you can see. You know, I buy the cheap tape, masking tape. Now, this is a good masking tape. This is 3M. It's thicker and all of that, but I normally buy the cheap stuff. I like it better for a lot of the things I be doing. Yeah. Can this showing up okay on there? What you do normally when I'm putting boxes together, I angle this piece up. I don't want to slide up under the other tip, but I want to make a tight fit. I don't know why I didn't use my 1/4" tape I brought. So what we got now is, this is where I do all my boxes I'm putting together. What do we lose, hon? Oh, putting it down where you can see it. All right, let me turn it this way so you can see what I'm doing. If I'm using something that's a little wider with the tape, I would just cut the excess off. And when I'm working on my work tape, it's different than trying to work backwards and show you what I'm doing. All right. If you notice, this end I cut off flush. I left a little bit hanging over here so that all right. So that when we put it together, okay, we'll cut out a hexagon box. But like I say, I did the whole thing without measuring. But when I'm actually doing it, you can do it more precise.
Just lay it on the table.
All right.
Price
All right.
right.
Now, as I told you,
You need to buy a better tape.
I dropped all these parts on the ground, but to show you how, by them being marked, by each one having a 1, 2, whatever it is, I can put these back together. I'll show you that first. All right. Now I'm going to turn this over and I want you to watch the grain. If you notice, can you see it good on the camera? Yeah. Okay. By marking them as I cut each one of these off, I cut them off square first. I took a board and I cut each one the length I wanted it. Then I went back and cut the angles on each one. When you do that, the only thing I have to do then is bring this right to the very end where the saw is going to cut. So that allows the grain doesn't jump that much. So everybody kind of see, all I took out was 1/8 of an inch in between. All right, and that allows my grain to be continuous, except for where these two back edges are going to come together. But sometimes you can pick where you want to cut it out of a piece of wood so that this edge and this edge, most people won't notice, it won't be a lot of jump in the grain, you know, where the grains will be more compatible. But if it is, it doesn't matter because that's always my hinge side. So I start back at the hinge side, cutting my pieces, because that's going to be on the back. So when people look at that box on 3 sides, they're going to see the grain going around continuously. All right? I got some 1/4 inch, Rob. All right. I get it. Yeah. I think this 1/4 inch might hold it enough for me to do what I'm going to do with marking it. This is a demonstration I was doing and I cut the wrong end, but what I do if I'm doing a box, since I'm going to flock the inside, this doesn't matter, I'm going to fill it in with wood filler and sand it down. When I put flocking on it, nobody but me and a few little beetles or whatever might be in the wood would know it was ever there. See, when I'm on my work table, I can just cut it. I don't want to cut the table here. You notice every time I cut, I do that. I don't want to leave blades sticking out. It becomes a habit. You don't have to think about it. I'm missing a piece. 5. That would be unique if I could do that box. Thought that was going to be a problem, didn't you? You know, it took me a few years to realize I still don't always do it, but most of the time when we go in the shop, we make sure that we got everything we need except our common sense. We leave it outside the door. You need to take it in with you. Now, this was one I did on demonstration. It shouldn't be loose like that. Where is the other one? I got more. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to show you how to do this the way it is. I got one that's cut better. Sometimes when you're doing demonstrations, if I'm showing you the technique, but everything is not as precise, so if one angle is off, it doesn't fit. But when you do a dry fit, this should be a tight fit. It shouldn't have any, if there's any movement in it, the only thing I would do is go back and skim each one of these angles just ever so slightly to make sure that they're true 30 degrees. When I put it back together, my grain will still be pretty much continuous because I'm not taking any amount of wood off to make a noticeable difference. Everybody understand that? All right. Now, if I want to do, I want to cut a bottom to fit this. All right, I'm going to cut the slots on this saw out of here. But first, I'm going to rip each one of these down to where it's only about 1.5 inches. So we can show you how to rip the short pieces safely on this saw. All right. But if I was going to cut the bottom on this, I would do this. Does the saw show it? On the inside, I will put a 1. That's right, turn around this way where you can see it better. Can you see that 1? Yeah. All right, I will put a 1 here. I can put an A, B, or whatever. I just want to make sure that this bottom is only going to fit this box one way. It's a hexagon box because it's 6 sides. But when I glue it up, the box might not be perfectly geometrically. If you measured each angle, they wouldn't be exactly the same. It might be racked just slightly. Not enough to where you can see it, but it won't matter. I'm making this fit this, okay? So by placing this on here, all I'm doing is marking the inside. Now I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch groove up in here. I'm going to cut a groove up in this box a 1/4 inch. So what I want now is I want 3/16 all the way around here. That's my cut line for this bottom, so that when I put it in there, it will go up in this slot. All right. Now most people use a lot of, these would be some of the most valuable things you use in shop. These are the most common sizes I use, thicknesses I use for stuff I'm doing. So I would take the 3/16 and I'm going to hold it. I'm doing this in a hurry.
That was one of my first woodworking projects, Ted, is making those sticks after you demonstrated about 9 years ago.
They make it easier, and I'll be honest with you. Most people that have ever taken a class, 2 things they always do. The sticks is one thing, and 2-sided tape is the other thing. I had a fellow at John C. Chem when I was teaching. He came and took the class because his wife was teaching something there for the week. And he was a woodworker, and he said, well, he just takes something. So he signed up for my class I was doing. And this is a week-long class. And he had told his wife, I probably won't learn anything, but I'm going to be somewhere I can go. He didn't say much until about Thursday of the week, Wednesday or Thursday. When I showed him these here, his eyes lit up when I showed him how to use them. And when I got through doing this and a couple other things, he said that was worth the price of the class. But what I'm doing now, this is my cut line for this bottom. And I didn't say I wasn't going to measure, I said I wasn't going to use a tape measure. These are things that I use to make it more convenient for me. All right, any question?
Drawn around your box on the inside and outside, that wouldn't work? Why couldn't you have drawn around your box on the inside and the outside? Would that not work as well?
No. The reason is I still would have to do the marking I just did. Because now, see now, I would have a mark here and here. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving where you can see it. I would have a mark here and here, George. I still would have to put this mark so I know where I'm going to cut, what size to cut the bottom. See, if I cut it here, it will fit flush with the outside of the box. I'd have to do it on the bottom. Okay? So that's why, oh, No question, that's not a question that's silly. Sometimes my mind works funny too. All right, now let me cut this over here. Let me get rid of some of this excess wood. Huh? I'm leaving just a little bit of that line so you can see where I'm cutting it. Now what we've basically done, can you see that on the saw? All right, that's where we cut the bottom. Now if I want to cut a top, the only thing I would do, okay. Now, I want this top to overhang, what do I do with my sticks? That's all right. See, I want this top to overhang 5/8 of an inch. All right. I'll do the same thing. I will put a mark, a 1 and a 1. Because when I cut it, it's cut to fit this box the way this box is, regardless of what the shape is. So now I want this to fit 5/8 of an inch overhang. Now, can you see that? I don't have to mark it at one time. That's my cut line. So when I take this off, I'm going to that saw and do the same thing. I'm going to cut the top to fit that way. If I wanted to fit overhang of 1/8 of an inch, then I would just put my box down and mark it 1/8 of an inch. Now if it was an irregular shaped box, I'll just show you this and then we'll end it. Because I'll show you how to cut the irregular shaped boxes off the drawing. If it was an irregular shaped box like this, I would do the same thing. I can take, once I cut the piece of wood, you know, I have a piece of wood big enough, and I cut the box out and put the tape on it like this. If I wanted to overhang a 5/8, I would just put it on a piece of wood and mark it the same way. So it doesn't matter about the shape. Okay. Now, see if one end was round, and that's what I have these for. This is where I have to use my finger to hold on. If this end was round, I use my finger to hold on the, once I've shaped the outside of the box, I use my finger to do that. Oh, let me do it this way you can see it. Can you see it now? Yeah. I put my finger on the outside, my pencil here, and I can do my line right around the box, which gives me the thickness of the wall I want when I'm doing irregular shaped boxes. All right, so that's the way I, kind of do that. Then you can do the shaping yourself to make it fit. Any questions on what I've done today? I hope I didn't bore everybody to death talking too much. I jump around, but I just hope you went home with some useful information.